Across Africa today, in market stalls and universities, on social media timelines and protest chants, one name continues to surface with awe and hope: Ibrahim Traoré.
Well, army officers in Burkina Faso have announced the overthrow of military leader Paul-Henri Damiba. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has been declared the new head of the West African country.
He wears no crown, he's no movie star, he holds no democratic mandate. Yet to many young Africans, he's a symbol of something rare: courage, sovereignty, and vision.
People could be heard saying that they would die for the African president Ibrahim Traoré.
Vive la révolution! Abat la France!
Instead of dying, how about we kill for Ibrahim Traoré? We don't need any more black people dying. We need black people to stand up and fight and kill for him.
Since his sudden rise to power in September 2022, the young military captain from Burkina Faso, just 34 years at the time, has become a phenomenon, not only in his home country, but across the African continent. In an age when trust in leadership is eroding, Ibrahim Traoré commands loyalty that borders on myth.
Me, in my old age, I will fight in the Burkina Faso army. All these people follow me and we will fight in the Burkina Faso army. They should dare try Ibrahim Traoré. We dare you, France. We dare you, America. Touch him.
But why? Why do young Africans in Kenya, Nigeria, Mali, South Africa, Ghana, and Senegal feel inspired by a soldier turned leader from one of the world's poorest countries? This is the story of Ibrahim Traoré, his rise, his image, his message, and the powerful forces, historic, political, and digital, that make him one of the most beloved leaders in Africa and in the whole world today. But it is also a cautionary tale, because love, when unguarded, can become blind. And Africa's history is full of heroes turned strongmen, liberators turned dictators. Let us begin where it all started. A quiet, soft-spoken captain with a defiant heart and a people desperate for change. Ibrahim Traoré was born in 1988 in Bondoki, a small town in western Burkina Faso, the son of a modest family. He grew up during the military rule of Blaise Compaoré, the very man accused of helping to assassinate revolutionary icon Thomas Sankara in 1987. That betrayal and the decades of authoritarian rule that followed formed the political backdrop of Traoré's youth. He was a gifted student. In 2006, he was admitted to the University of Ouagadougou, where he studied geology. But in 2009, like many patriotic young men frustrated with the country's decline, he joined the army. He received further training in Morocco and soon distinguished himself in counter-terrorism operations, rising quietly through the ranks. Burkina Faso, once a symbol of Pan-African hope under Sankara, had by now become a country overwhelmed by jihadist insurgency, poverty, and political instability. Over 2 million people had been displaced by violence. Terror attacks struck down villages, schools, churches, and military convoys alike. Citizens no longer felt protected. Then came January 2022. A military coup led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba ousted the civilian president Roch-Marc Kabore, promising security.
Now, weeks after leading a successful coup, Burkina Faso's military leader Paul-Henri Damiba was sworn in as president on Wednesday with the promise to deal with the mounting insecurity that ousted his predecessor.
But things only got worse. Within months, Damiba was accused of enjoying luxury, ignoring the war front, and maintaining cozy ties with France. On September 30, 2022, Ibrahim Traoré led a second coup. The reasons: Damiba's failure to fight insecurity and accusations that he had betrayed the revolutionary spirit.
The military leaders had overthrown their own lieutenant turned president and promised to tackle the volatile security situation.
At just 34, Traoré became the youngest head of state in the world. But unlike other coup leaders, he appeared humble. He addressed the nation in plain fatigues, standing beside soldiers, speaking softly but firmly. "We have decided to take our responsibilities," he said. "The fight for our territory and our sovereignty must be our absolute priority." There were no promises of elections, no polished manifestos, just the raw, tired voice of a soldier who said he was of the people and who called for sacrifice and unity. And to the shock of the world, the people responded, not with fear, but with adoration. What followed Traoré's rise was something the world had not expected. Not mass protests or demands for a swift return to democracy, but a groundswell of love and loyalty, unlike anything seen in recent West African history. In Ouagadougou, crowds flowed the streets chanting his name. Traders wore t-shirts bearing his face beside that of Thomas Sankara, their beloved revolutionary martyr. It was as though in Traore, they saw not a break from the past but a continuation of the dream that Sankara died for. One of the most striking displays of loyalty came in late 2022, when rumors of a possible assassination attempt against Traore began to circulate. In response, hundreds of Burkinabe, young and old, slept outside the presidential compound, saying they would shield him with their bodies if necessary. These were not soldiers or hired men. These were ordinary citizens.
So does it mean that each and everyone in here is not being paid?
Yeah, they're not.
For the love of your country?
For
For the love of your president?
They're not paid.
Across towns and rural communities, the story was the same. Street interviews, local radio, and video reports showed a remarkable pattern. People of all backgrounds, many of whom have suffered under years of insecurity, expressing not just support but deep emotional affection for the young captain. This was no ordinary popularity. This was patriotic projection. In Traore, they saw a man who lived simply, spoke plainly, and stood boldly against forces that had long humiliated them: jihadis, corrupt elites, and foreign interests. Even his refusal to move into the luxurious presidential palace resonated. He reportedly continued living in military barracks, dressing like his men, and traveling light. Unlike his predecessors, there were no convoys or flashy SUVs, no expensive watches, no polished suit. He wasn't trying to act presidential. He was trying to act honest. And in a country where honesty in leadership had become a myth, that was revolutionary enough. Ibrahim Traoré's popularity didn't stop at Burkina Faso's border. In a matter of months, he became a Pan-African sensation. From Mali to Nigeria, from Senegal to South Africa, his image began to circulate on social media, in street art, on t-shirts, and even in music videos. Why? Because across the continent, young Africans saw themselves in him. A man in his 30s, untainted by decades of failure, standing boldly against global powers and domestic wrath. A man who spoke of dignity and acted with clarity. His speeches, raw and unpolished, were clipped, subtitled, and shared across TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. In Mali and Niger, where fellow military leaders had also overthrown governments citing insecurity and French interference, Traoré was embraced as a brother. In these countries, pro-Traoré's murals emerged alongside those of Assimi Goïta and Abdourahmane Tiani, forming a visual trinity of resistance against the old order. In Nigeria, Telegram groups and Twitter threads celebrated him with hashtags like African Hope and Traoré the Brave. YouTube videos praising his defiance against France attracted hundreds of thousands of views. Even in South Africa, far removed from West Africa's geopolitics, political activists and social commentators invoked his name in debates about sovereignty and accountability.
Captain Traore, we stand with Traore because we know that Traore stands for the unity of Africa. We are Traore, and Traore is all of us.
His Pan-African appeal was not limited to language or region. He united a generation disillusioned by elite betrayal. To many, he represented a new kind of African leader, not polished but principled, not chosen but committed. The parallels were drawn quickly. In a continent where elections often fail to deliver justice, Ibrahim Traoré was not loved because he was elected. He was loved because he looked like he meant it. This emotional wave swept through not just youth but also the diaspora, many of whom saw Traoré as part of the global resistance against neocolonialism and the failures of Western-aligned leadership in Africa. And yet, beneath this administration lies a deeper historical wound, one that explains most of this emotional outpouring, a wound named France. To understand the love for Ibrahim Traoré, one must understand the long shadow of France in West Africa. For over a century, Burkina Faso, formerly Upper Volta, was a colony of France. But even after independence in 1960, real sovereignty proved elusive. France maintained a tight grip on the economies, currencies, and military policies, and even leadership choices of its former colonies. One of the most enduring tools of control was the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency that is used by 14 African countries, including Burkina Faso. Though backed by the French treasury, it had long been criticized as a mechanism for economic dependency and resource extraction. French companies dominate key sectors: mining, telecoms, and infrastructure. Gold, Burkina Faso's top export, flows mostly to foreign markets, while local communities remain impoverished. French troops stationed under the pretext of fighting jihadis have been accused by citizens of complicity, inaction, or even worse. By 2022, public anger against France reached a boiling point. In Ouagadougou and Bamako, French flags were burned in protest. When Traore took power, he gave their frustration direction. In early 2023, his government ordered the expulsion of French troops from Burkina Faso, ending a long-standing military agreement. The French ambassador was also asked to leave. These moves were not just symbolic, they were seismic. No post-independence Burkinabe leader had dared to take such steps. To young Africans, it was the clearest signal yet that Traore was not playing the old game. He was breaking it. We want partners, not masters, Traore declared in the 2023 address. We will no longer be slaves in our own land. Such statement resonated deeply, not just in Francophone countries like Mali, Guinea, and Senegal, but also in Anglophone nations with their own history of foreign interference. This anti-colonial defiance, coupled with Traore's simplicity and youth, created a leader who embodied the frustration of generations. And for many, those frustrations are not just historical, but they are personal. They are rooted in poverty, insecurity, and betrayal, all of which Burkina Faso knows very well. Which brings us to another critical reason why Africans love Ibrahim Traoré: the sad, painful history of his country. Burkina Faso's story is one of promise interrupted. Its name, meaning the land of upright people, was given by Thomas Sankara in 1984, a very young revolutionary who came to power at just 33 and envisioned an Africa that could stand tall without begging from the West. Sankara launched bold reforms, land redistribution, mass vaccination campaigns, women emancipation, and education drives. He refused foreign aid, slashed government luxuries, and nationalized wealth for public use. But in October 1987, Sankara was assassinated in a coup led by his close ally, Blaise Compaoré. A coup widely believed to have been orchestrated with foreign support, particularly from France and Côte d'Ivoire. Compaoré will go on to rule for 27 years, slowly undoing Sankara's reforms, deepening corruption, and weakening state institutions. Burkina Faso was stable on paper, but it was a stability bought through repression and stagnation. After Compaoré was ousted in 2014 uprising, the country hoped for a democratic revival, but what followed was chaos. By the late 2010s, Burkina Faso was in the grip of a brutal jihadist insurgency. Attacks by armed groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and ISIS devastated the north and the east. Villages were burned, schools were shut down, over 2 million people were displaced, entire provinces became no-go areas. Even the capital Ouagadougou was attacked multiple times. The army, underfunded and demoralized, struggled to respond. As the state unraveled, trust in elected leaders collapsed. Presidents came and went, promises were made and broken. International partners, particularly France, offered support that often did more to protect interests than people. In this voice, Traoré rose. He didn't promise immediate peace, he promised to fight, to reclaim land, to make Burkina Faso proud again. And unlike past leaders, he said he would do it without kneeling to anyone. This message landed powerfully in a country whose dreams had been shattered not once but repeatedly, by coups, by foreign interference, by poverty, and by terror. In this context, Traoré is not just seen as a president, he's seen as a second chance, a second Sankara, a second fire. But fires attract attention, and in Africa, attention from the West has not always meant protection. Sometimes it has meant elimination. Which brings us to the next reason Traoré is so revered: the fear that he might meet the same fate as those who came before him. Across Africa, the ghost of fallen revolutionaries still haunts the collective memory. From Patrice Lumumba in the Congo to Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, many of the continent's boldest, most visionary leaders met early death, often under suspicious circumstances, with foreign fingerprints all over the scene. In 1961, Lumumba, Congo's first elected prime minister, was brutally murdered with the alleged complicity of Belgian and American intelligence. His crime: nationalizing resources and refusing to be a puppet of the West. In 1987, Sankara was gunned down in his office. The assassination was widely believed to be backed by French intelligence, though documents remain classified. His radical independence, his refusal of World Bank loans, his condemnation of neocolonialism, this made him too dangerous. Today, many Africans fear that Ibrahim Traoré must be next. The fear is not unfounded. Since taking power, Traoré has made it clear: no one will dictate to Burkina Faso. He has expelled French troops, cut ties to Paris, criticized foreign NGOs, and welcomed cooperation with Russia, move that triggered concern in Western capitals. In 2023, Burkina Faso formed an alliance with Mali and Niger called the Alliance of the Sahel State, a military and political bloc that signaled open resistance to French and Western influence in the region. Not long after, rumors of assassination began to swell. Social media channels loyal to Traore amplified claims that Western actors were plotting to remove him. While unverified, these fears tap into a long and painful memory. In African history, the leaders who stand tallest often don't live long enough to see their visions fulfilled. This perceived threat, whether real or imagined, has made Traore followers even more protective. In the eyes of many, he is not just a leader, he's a target. And in Africa, to be targeted by the West is to be validated.
Ibrahim Traoré is a product of necessity, not of popularity contest. In a continent where democracy often just means who got funded the most by foreign donors, sometimes leadership has to emerge through force to defend sovereignty.
And herein lies the paradox. The greater the risk Traoré's life, the more symbolic power he gains. People love him because he might get killed. And if he's killed, that love might turn to legend, just like Sankara, Lumumba, and Cabral. But Traoré is not fighting this battle alone. He has a weapon those leaders never had, a weapon called social media. In a continent where revolutionary voices were once muted by censorship or killed in silence, Ibrahim Traoré had what Sankara, Lumumba, and Biko never had, the internet, and with it, the viral power of social media. Since coming to power, Traoré's image and message have been amplified by a digital movement. Telegram channels, TikTok edit, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube documentaries, and WhatsApp forwards all sing to the same tune. Traoré is the hope of Africa, the liberator, fearless lion. His supporters have curated and circulated a consistent visual identity. This online movement is not random, it is organized. This is propaganda, yes, but it is effective. And in many ways, it is counter-propaganda, a direct response to decades of international media framing African military leaders as villains or pawns. What makes this digital campaign powerful is that it bypasses traditional gatekeepers. African youths no longer rely solely on state TV or foreign news for information. They watch short videos, they read captions, they share reels, they believe what feels authentic. And Traoré, with his informal style, his youth, and his unapologetic stance, feels real. In 1987, when Thomas Sankara was assassinated, the world learned about it through radio reports, state-controlled channels. His memory had to be recovered slowly, painfully over time. But if anything were to happen to Traoré today, his message will not die. It will multiply instantly. His face, voice, and speeches are already encoded into millions of phones and memories. This is the power of the age he rules in, the digital battlefield, where perception is often more powerful than policy. Yet, while social media builds legend, it also obscures truth. And one truth that is too often forgotten is this: popularity is not performance. Which brings us to the contradiction that must be confronted: the failure of democratic leaders across Africa and the hunger that gave rise to men like Traoré. To understand Traoré's widespread appeal, we must confront the hard truth. Democracy has failed millions of Africans, not in theory, but in practice.
So Cameroon's 92-year-old President Paul Biya has officially declared that he'll be seeking an unprecedented 8th term in the October 12th presidential elections.
Across the continent, leaders who were elected by the people have governed as though they were never accountable to anyone. Elections are held, but what comes after them is often a parade of broken promises, allied corruption, and worsening inequality. Take South Africa, where the ANC, once a symbol of liberation, now faces mass disillusionment due to unemployment, load shedding, and scandals. In Nigeria, democracy has produced leaders whose campaign promises roads, jobs, and reforms, only to deliver insecurity, fuel scarcity, and record debt. In Kenya, Ghana, and Zambia, citizens complain not just about poverty, but about the betrayal of hope. The ballot, once a sacred rite, has become a recycled ritual. Voters show up every 4 years. The result rarely changes their lives. In this vacuum of trust, a dangerous belief has begun to spread: that strong unelected leaders may do better than weak elected ones. Traoré's popularity thrives in that space. He represents action over ceremony, principle over process. He didn't run a campaign. He didn't hire consultants. He wasn't endorsed by billionaires. He took power and began to make moves. And for a generation of Africans who have never known a functioning state, That feels like progress. This is the irony. The failure of democratic leaders has made room for military figures to claim moral legitimacy. When ballot presidents deliver worse outcomes than bullet presidents, people begin to doubt democracy itself. A 2023 Afrobarometer poll found that in parts of West Africa, over 60% of the respondents under 35 believe that a military government can be better than a civilian one if it ensures security and basic services. This is not an embrace of authoritarianism, it is a cry of desperation. And in that desperation, Traore shines, not because he's perfect, but because of so many others have failed. Therein lies the danger. For once the people forget to question their leaders, once love blinds them to excess, dictatorship creeps in unnoticed. Which brings us to our final necessary reflection, the cautionary tale that must accompany Traore's rise. Love is powerful, but unchecked love can become dangerous, especially in politics. Ibrahim Traoré has captured the imagination of a continent. His stance against neocolonialism, his youth, his humility, his clarity, they all make him adorable. But history warns us, even the most beloved leaders can fall to hubris, power, and paranoia. In 2023, Traoré dissolved Burkina Faso's constitution and delayed democratic elections. He claimed the country was not yet ready. Many citizens agreed, believing security must come first. But how long is first? How long before delay becomes denial and patriotism becomes personal power? Already, voices of dissent in Burkina Faso have grown quieter. Press freedoms are more restricted. Opposition figures have been harassed or silenced. Human rights groups have warned against extrajudicial killings in anti-terror operations. And civil society organizations see the fear speaking out. This isn't unfamiliar. We've seen it before. In Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe was once hailed as a liberator. In Uganda, Yoweri Museveni promised a new era of people-centered rule. In Eritrea, Isaias Afwerki led a heroic liberation struggle. But all became what they once fought. Not overnight, but slowly, insidiously, because no one dared to tell them the truth. And that is where we must be different with Traore. If we truly love him, if we believe in the cause he represents, we must hold him to account. We must expect transparency, human rights, civil liberties, and yes, democratic restoration. Not at the pace of the West, but at the pace of justice. African standards must not be lowered in the name of solidarity. They must be raised in the name of self-respect. A free press is not a Western idea. It is a human necessity. The rule of law is not colonial. It is protection from tyranny. Traore's rise gives us hope, but hope must be guarded, not with blind loyalty, but with truthful scrutiny. We must love our heroes enough to correct them, said Steve Biko, or they will one day become the villains of our children's stories. So, why do Africans love Ibrahim Traoré? Because he's bold where others are timid, because he speaks where others whispered, because he walks with soldiers while others fly in private jet, because he tells France no while others ask for crumbs. But if that love is to last, it must grow deeper. It must evolve from adoration to accountability, from praise to participation, from blind applause to clear-eyed vigilance. Let us not make him a god. Let us help him remain a servant of the people.